been told we cannot do this by a chorus of cynics. They will only grow louder and more disciplined. We've been asked to pause for a reality check. We've been warned against offering the people of this nation false hope. But in the unlikely story,
never have the nations of the world had so much to lose or so much to gain. Together we shall save our planet, or together we shall perish in its flames. Save it we can, and save it we must. And then shall we earn the eternal thanks of mankind, and as peacemakers, the eternal blessing of God.
For decades, we have known the days of cheap and easily accessible oil were numbered.
We have the world's highest level of technology.
We have the know-how. We have the ability.
Our unyielding faith,
worthy of a great nation.
We have the most skilled workforce.
our resilience.
America is a rising nation.
Into this decade, in the year 1980, the United States will not be dependent on any other country for the energy we need.
By 1985.
By the year 2000.
Within a matter of 3 or 4 years.
To replace more than 75% of our oil imports from the Middle East by 2025.
Now is the moment for this generation to embark on a national mission to unleash America's innovation and seize control of our own destiny.
Why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone. And therefore, as we set sail, we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked. The United States, as the world knows, will never start a war. We do not want a war. We do not now expect a war. This generation of Americans has already had enough, more than enough, of war and hate and oppression. The right to live out our lives without fear of devastation, the right to breathe air as nature provided it, the right of future generations to a healthy existence. While we proceed to safeguard our national interests, let us also safeguard human interests. And the elimination of war and arms is clearly in the interests of both.
Hello, this is Marianne DeMarco, your host for the DoctorBiodiesel documentary. Ever wonder why 4.6 billion gallons of waste vegetable oil per year gets trapped in every city's sewers and fouls our rivers, streams, and oceans? Ever wonder why this extremely valuable resource is treated in such a worthless manner? Not just this year, but the past 10 years? Where did 40 billion gallons of waste vegetable oil go in the last 10 years? And you guessed it, if you don't help fund this project, where will the next 40 billion gallons go?
we have been told we cannot do this by a chorus of cynics. They will only grow louder and more disciplined. We've been asked to pause for a reality check. We've been warned against offering the people of this nation false hope.
Councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists, and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. Due and largely responsible for the sweeping changes in our industrial military posture has been the technological revolution during recent decades. In this revolution, research has become central. It also becomes more formalized, complex, and costly. A steadily increasing share is conducted for, by, or at the direction of the federal government. Today, the solitary inventor, tinkering in his shop, has been overshadowed by task forces of scientists.
Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies, in the final sense, a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and are not clothed.
One of the most colorful visits to the presidential cruiser was that of the ruler of Saudi Arabia, King Ibn Saud. The 65-year-old monarch leaves his country for the first time to attend this.
You have to picture this extraordinary moment at the end of World War II. The fateful meeting on February 14, 1945, between the President of the United States, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and the King of Saudi Arabia, Abdulaziz ibn Saud. On one hand, the leader of the free world, a passionate advocate of democracy and freedom, sitting next to an absolute monarch who was accompanied by slaves and astrologers and Bedouin bodyguards. No records were kept of this meeting, but all historians and American policymakers agree that the basis of the discussion was that henceforth the United States would provide the royal family with protection in return for an exclusive American right to develop Saudi Arabia's oil. And every American president since then has reaffirmed the U.S. alliance with Saudi Arabia.
Our relations with Saudi Arabia have been long, close, and cordial. As the venerable Arabic saying has it, our house is your house.
There's an Arab saying, the sands are blowing. And I submit to you, King Fahd, that if the sands of time give us any hint of the future, it is that in the days ahead, the friendship between the Saudi Arabian and American people will be a strong and vital force in the world.
And so this special relationship with Saudi Arabia has shaped American foreign policy since Roosevelt's day.
I'm delighted to announce that a new voice will be joining our climate advocacy efforts. Leonardo DiCaprio is not just one of the world's leading actors. He has also a long-standing commitment to environmental causes, including through his foundation. Today, I'm appointing him as our newest United Nations Messenger of Peace, with a special focus on climate change issues.
I stand before you not as an expert, but as a concerned citizen, one of the 400,000 people who marched in the streets of New York on Sunday, and the billions of others around the world who want to solve our climate crisis. Every week, we're seeing new and undeniable climate events, evidence that accelerated climate change is here right now. Droughts are intensifying, our oceans are acidifying, with methane plumes rising up from the ocean floor. We are seeing extreme weather events and the West Antarctic and Greenland ice sheets melting at unprecedented rates, decades ahead of scientific projections. None of this is rhetoric, and none of it is hysteria. It is fact. My friends, this body, perhaps more than any other gathering in human history, now faces this difficult but achievable task. You can make history, or you will be vilified by it. To be clear, this is not about just telling people to change their light bulbs or to buy a hybrid car. This disaster has grown beyond the choices that individuals make. This is now about our industries and our governments around the world taking decisive, large-scale action. Now must be our moment for action. We need to put a price tag on carbon emissions and eliminate government subsidies for oil, coal, and gas companies. We need to end the free ride that industrial polluters have been given in the name of a free market economy. They do not deserve our tax dollars. They deserve our scrutiny, for the economy itself will die if our ecosystems collapse. This is not a partisan debate. It is a human one. Clean air and a livable climate are inalienable human rights. And solving this crisis is not a question of politics. It is a question of our own survival. This is the most urgent of times and the most urgent of messages. Honored delegates, leaders of the world, I pretend for a living, but you do not. The people made their voices heard on Sunday around the world, and the momentum will not stop. But now it is your turn. The time to answer humankind's greatest challenge is now. We beg of you to face it with courage and honesty. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Later this month, I'm going to Alaska. And I'm going because Alaskans are on the front lines of one of the greatest challenges we face this century: climate change. You see, climate change once seemed like a problem for future generations. But for most Americans, it's already a reality. Deeper droughts, longer wildfire seasons, some of our cities even flood at high tide. In Alaska, glaciers are melting. The hunting and fishing upon which generations have depended for their way of life and for their jobs are being threatened. Storm surges once held at bay now endanger entire villages. As Alaskan permafrost melts, some homes are even sinking into the ground. The state's God-given natural treasures are all at risk. When I'm there, I'll meet with Americans who are dealing with climate change every day, and I'll talk with other nations about how we can tackle this challenge together. I hope you'll follow along at whitehouse.gov/Alaska. Because what's happening in Alaska isn't just a preview of what will happen to the rest of us if we don't take action. It's our wake-up call. The alarm bells are ringing. And as long as I'm president, America will lead the world to meet this threat before it's too late. America's Clean Power Plan, a plan 2 years in the making, and the single most important step America has ever taken in the fight against global climate change. And today, after working with states and cities and power companies, the EPA is setting the first ever nationwide standards to end the limitless dumping of carbon pollution from power plants. So the idea of setting standards and cutting carbon pollution is not new. It's not radical. What is new is that starting today, Washington is starting to catch up with the vision of the rest of the country. And by setting these standards, we can actually speed up our transition to a cleaner, safer future. With this Clean Power Plan, by 2030, carbon pollution from our power plants will be 32% lower than it was a decade ago. And the nerdier way to say that is that we'll be keeping 870 million tons of carbon dioxide pollution out of our atmosphere.
Yes, we can. We can harness the ingenuity of farmers and scientists, citizens and entrepreneurs to free this nation from the tyranny of oil and save our planet from a point of no return.
To especially beware of that small group of selfish men who would clip the wings of the American eagle in order to feather their own nests.
What is the answer that I shall give in your name to this great man, the thrice chosen head of a nation of 130 millions? Here is the answer which I will give to President Roosevelt. Put your confidence in us. Give us your faith and your blessing, and under providence all will be well. We shall not fail or falter. We shall not weaken or tire. Neither the sudden shock of battle nor the long-drawn trials of vigilance and exertion will wear us down. Give us the tools, and we will finish the job.
So bear ourselves that if the British Empire and its Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will still say, this was their finest hour.
We have been told we cannot do this by a chorus of cynics. It will only grow louder and more disciplined. We've been asked to pause for a reality check. We've been warned against offering the people of this nation false hope. Yes, we can.
That small group of selfish men.
Give us the tools, and we will finish the job.
We know the battle ahead will be long. But always remember that no matter what obstacles stand in our way, nothing can stand in the way of the power of millions of voices calling for change. We have been told we cannot do this by a chorus of cynics.
The question you must be asking yourself is, do I have to be a biodiesel user to support biodiesel? And the answer is clearly no. If you want to help clean sewers from our rivers, streams, and oceans, we need your support. If you want to reduce the nation's dependence on foreign oil, we need your support. If you want to increase the nation's national security, we need your support. If you want to offset your own carbon footprint, we need your support. In the final analysis, you do not have to be a diesel user or a biodiesel user to support this project.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Vice President, members of Congress, and fellow Americans. Tonight, we meet at an urgent time for our country. We continue to face an economic crisis that has left millions of our neighbors jobless, and a political crisis that's made things worse. The people of this country work hard to meet their responsibilities. The question tonight is whether we'll meet ours. The question is whether, in the face of an ongoing national crisis, we can stop the political circus and actually do something to help the economy. The question is whether we can restore some of the fairness and security that has defined this nation since our beginning. Those of us here tonight can't solve all our nation's woes. Ultimately, our recovery will be driven not by Washington, but by our businesses and our workers. But we can help. The purpose of the American Jobs Act is simple: to put more people back to work and more money in the pockets of those who are working. It will create more jobs for construction workers, more jobs for teachers, more jobs for veterans, and more jobs for long-term unemployed. We now live in a world where technology has made it possible for companies to take their business anywhere. If we want them to start here and stay here and hire here, we have to be able to outbuild and out-educate and out-innovate every other country on earth.
We have been told we cannot do this by a chorus of cynics. It will only grow louder and more disciplined. We've been asked to pause for a reality check. We've been warned against offering the people of this nation false hope.
This is what Dr. Biodiesel is: a 2-liter soda bottle of pure ASTM2 biodiesel fuel additive, creating a B2 super fuel lubricity blend for optimum engine maintenance. Yes, you can get a synthetic diesel fuel additive, but there is nothing more environmentally friendly than using pure ASTM2 grade Dr. Biodiesel. Dr. Biodiesel is non-dangerous, non-explosive, non-caustic, and non-poisonous. Perfectly safe to have an extra 2-liter B2 super lubricity blend in your trunk at all times for perfect engine lubricity maintenance. And not one of the other synthetic additives can claim an 80% less pollution than the diesel fuel itself.
We can be the ones to build everything from fuel-efficient cars to advanced biofuels to semiconductors that we sell all around the world. That's how America can be #1 again. And that's how America will be #1 again. We shouldn't be in a race to the bottom where we try to offer the cheapest labor and the worst pollution standards. America should be in a race to the top, and I believe we can win that race. Yes, we are rugged individualists. Yes, we are strong and self-reliant. And it has been the drive and initiative of our workers and entrepreneurs that has made this economy the engine and the envy of the world. But there's always been another thread running throughout our history. A Republican president who mobilized government to build the Transcontinental Railroad, launched the National Academy of Sciences, set up the first land-grant colleges. And leaders of both parties have followed the example he set. Ask yourselves, where would we be right now if the people who sat here before us decided not to build our highways, not to build our bridges, our dams, our airports? What would this country be like if we had chosen not to spend money on public high schools, or research universities, or community colleges? Millions of returning heroes, including my grandfather, had the opportunity to go to school because of the GI Bill. Where would we be if they hadn't had that chance? How many jobs would it have cost us if past Congresses decided not to support the basic research that led to the internet and the computer chip? What kind of country would this be? Now, President Kennedy once said, "Our problems are man-made, therefore they can be solved by man."
Our problems are man-made, therefore they can be solved by man, and man can be as big as he wants. No problem of human destiny is beyond human beings. Man's reason and spirit have often solved the seemingly unsolvable, and we believe they can do it again. Our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's futures, and we are all mortal.
These are difficult years for our country, but we are Americans. We are tougher than the times we live in, and we are bigger than our politics have been. So let's meet the moment. Let's get to work, and let's show the world once again why the United States of America remains the greatest nation on earth. Thank you very much. God bless you. And God bless the United States of America.
We have been told we cannot do this by a chorus of cynics. They will only grow louder and more dissonant. We've been asked to pause for a reality check. We've been warned against offering the people of this nation false hope. We have been told we cannot do this by a chorus of cynics. They will only grow louder and more dissonant. We've been asked to pause for a reality check. We've been warned against offering the people of this nation false hope. But in the unlikely story that is America, there's never been anything false about hope.
You can see the real value of this project. Please don't let the obsolete powers that be continue to waste this precious resource that is projected to create 75,000 sustainable green jobs for you. Become a backer today.
We meet in an hour of change and challenge, in a decade of hope and fear, in an age of both knowledge and ignorance. The greater our knowledge increases, the greater our ignorance unfolds. No man can fully grasp how far and how fast we have come. But condense, if you will, the 50,000 years of man's recorded history in a time span of but a half a century. Stated in these terms, we know very little about the first 40 years, except at the end of them, advanced man had learned to use the skins of animals to cover them. Then about 10 years ago, under this standard, man emerged from his caves to construct other kinds of shelter. Only 5 years ago, man learned to write and use a cart with wheels. Christianity began less than 2 years ago. The printing press came this year. And then less than 2 months ago, during this whole 50-year span of human history, the steam engine provided a new source of power. Newton explored the meaning of gravity. Last month, electric lights and telephones and automobiles and airplanes became available. Only last week did we develop penicillin and television and nuclear power. This is a breathtaking pace, and such a pace cannot help but create new ills as it dispels old. So it is not surprising that some would have us stay where we are a little longer, to rest, to wait. If this capsule history of our progress teaches us anything, it is that man in his quest for knowledge and progress is determined and cannot be deterred. We shall send to the moon, 240,000 miles away, a giant rocket more than 300 feet tall on an untried mission to an unknown celestial body, and then return it safely to Earth. But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone. And therefore, as we set sail, we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked.
And the fact is that climate is changing faster than our efforts to address it. That, ladies and gentlemen, must change. We're not acting fast enough. I've come here today as the leader of the world's largest economy and its second largest emitter to say that the United States recognizes our role in creating this problem, and we embrace our responsibility to help solve it. And I believe we can solve it. That's the good news. Even if we cannot reverse the damage that we've already caused, we have the means, the scientific imagination and technological innovation to avoid irreparable harm. And I'm determined to make sure that American leadership continues to drive international action, because we can't do this alone. Even America and China together cannot do this alone. Even all the countries represented around here cannot do this alone. We have to do it together. This year in Paris has to be the year that the world finally reaches an agreement to protect the one planet that we've got while we still can. National Glacier Park, and behind me is one of the most visited glaciers in Alaska. It is spectacular, as you can see, and we've been able to spend the day out here just learning more about how the glaciers are receding. And you know, it's a signpost of what's happening with a changing climate. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a view of what it looks like out here. This is worth preserving, and I think what's just as important is climate change is not just affecting spectacular views like this. When you have warming taking place twice as fast here in Alaska as it is in the bottom 48 states, that is melting glaciers and blocks of ice that are raising sea levels, and you start getting an accelerated pace of climate change overall. So we've got to do something about it. Good news is we can if we take some smart steps now. All right, let me give you a little shot of what we're looking at all across this incredible valley. There's a shot of the glacier. This is just a little tongue sticking out from a massive block of ice that extends out for miles. And there are a number of glaciers all across this park that you can see. And that just gives you a sense of how incredible this landscape is. It is beautiful.